Welcome to the Week 7 Predictions Revolutionary Sports Show. I'm Brian Duchaine.
And I'm Corey Sullivan.
We're back at it. And, I know you guys missed us from last week, so we had to come back. We'll be at it every week here on the Revolutionary Sports Show, making our football picks. I know everybody is really curious about how the experts meaning us, feel about these games. So we're going to start it off Bears and Packers. We got the Bears, who have been absolutely terrible this year. I mean, they showed a little bit of life last week going against the Packers, who are not looking like the average Packers. So it's going to be an interesting matchup. The spread, Packers by 10. I don't know if I can really agree with that, but I would take the Packers to win that just because they have Aaron Rodgers. And I think this might be one of those games that Richard Rodgers actually breaks out and goes off. We've been waiting for it all season, and Richard Rodgers was that guy last season. And now that Aaron Rodgers has more weapons, he just hasn't really looked his way. And I think Richard Rodgers is going to have a day against the Bears, and we'll really see what happens. I mean, it's the Packers and it's the Bears. Packers obviously way better than the Bears historically, as of late, and this year. But the Packers just haven't been as dominant as they have been. So I'll take the Packers by a touchdown in this game. Corey, what do you see in this matchup?
I see a bunch of injured players and two teams that really aren't playing to their potential. Maybe the Bears are playing to their potential. They just aren't very good. Brian Hoyer is trying his best. He's playing very good football. 4 straight games over 300 yards passing. And we just have to figure out which Jordan Howard is going to show up. Is it going to be the 130-yard of total offense per game that he was putting up against the Lions and Colts, or is it going to be the 30 yards he put up last week? It's always hit or miss with these Bears running backs, Howard and Langford. You just never know what you're going to get from them, and their consistency is really hurting the team. It's a huge reason that they're 1-5. I mean, their defense isn't really providing much else for their offense to be good, but Alshon Jeffrey, Meredith, Eddie Royal, and Zach Miller are trying their best. They're all consistent. They're all around 30 receptions. Hoyer's moving the ball around well and is playing well as he can, and his team only is 1-5. So I don't expect him to keep this up, and if he's not able to keep this up, it's going to be another loss. And it's tough to play at Lambeau. Aaron Rodgers not playing like the Aaron Rodgers that we know, but it's always tough to beat the Packers and Aaron Rodgers, no matter how each individual is playing. But I think that they'll win by a touchdown. I think that's fair. The Packers just have a lot more weapons than the Bears do right now, although the Bears are playing a very good football for their record anyway.
And then moving on to Giants versus Rams. The pick is Giants by 2. That one should be a pretty close one, and this is another one. In London, this is exactly the kind of game that we hate. Going over to London, sacrificing a home game, and just trying to get interest from overseas and sending the Giants and the Rams over there. I know we've talked about it before. We're not big fans of these London games, and, they're not real marquee matchups. It's the Giants and the Rams. Nothing really special about that. But the Rams offense looked like it was firing on all cylinders last week. And, I mean, granted, it was against the Lions, who give up probably 50, 60 points a week. Okay, maybe not that dramatic, but they do give up a lot of points. And Case Keenum was torching the Lions defense. But then the Lions defense came up with a goal line stand on the 1-yard line, and that was pretty clutch. Ended up winning the game for him. And then that pick at the end, Raphael Bush comes up clutch and picks off Case Keenum. I think the Lions are going to make a habit out of this of picking people off in the last minute to try to end the game. But maybe it's just me. But as far as the Giants go, you got Odell just recently got engaged to the field goal net, so that's pretty exciting news. And I don't know how he'll play now that he's engaged. Maybe it'll be a little bit different, but it sounds like him and the field goal net are made up now. And we talked about it. And Eli Manning, it really depends on what Eli Manning shows up for this one. Eli can be one of the clutchest quarterbacks in the game, or he can be one of the worst in the game if he doesn't show up to the game. And people might make the argument you could say that about anybody in the league, but Eli, probably one of the biggest hot and cold quarterbacks you'll ever see. And I know we mentioned that trifecta of receivers with Sterling Shepard, you got Victor Cruz and Odell, and those guys can bring down the house if you get them rolling. And I'm going to go ahead and stick with this pick and say the Giants do end up winning this. If it was at the Rams and it was in LA, I say the Rams take it, but it's in London, no home field advantage. I'm taking the Giants.
I like that pick. Odell single-handedly won the game last week, 222 yards. I don't even think any receiver broke 40 for the Giants. The running backs didn't do anything, and Eli and Odell just had a day. And you guessed it. You guessed it perfectly. Although you said if anybody was able to cover Odell, it would be the net. And I think he heard you because his first celebration is he covered himself with the net. So it was pretty funny. Odell was he finally had one of his days where he was the star of the show, and he showed out just like Odell always does on primetime. It's going to be great to have him in London. The NFL, finally. I don't want to say it's a good game, but they finally got something for the international fans to be excited about. Luckily enough, because the Rams didn't come through, so that wasn't that exciting. And the only thing that I think that the Rams could do to make this game even more exciting is to unleash Jared Goff. Keenum, I've been hard on Keenum all season long. He finally had a good game last week, although he threw a pick to end their comeback run against the Lions last week to as you said, Raphael Bush. But he was having a good game at the time, and I believe he even had a rushing touchdown, and things were going good for him until, the game was on the line. And so I think eventually it's going to have to be Goff time, and what perfect time than, a primetime game in London against Odell Beckham. So it's going to be a good one, but I think that Odell and that Giants receiving core is finally coming around, and, now that Odell has had his breakout game, I think Sterling and Victor Cruz will be not far behind.
Then we got the Saints at the Chiefs. Chiefs are a 7-point favorite in this one. I know they have home field advantage. They've got one of the toughest places to play in the league, outside of Seattle, that is. But they're a 7-point favorite against one of the hottest quarterbacks in the league right now with Drew Brees. I say Drew Brees can go out and pick apart their defense. I don't care how good the Chiefs' defense is. And, Jamal Charles hasn't really been what they've been looking for. He's been the typical Jamal Charles, injured. Is he going to play? Is he going to be what he was before? And you never really know with Jamal Charles. And I'm just not real sold on Alex Smith either. And I'm going to go ahead and go against the odds for this one. I'm picking the Saints. I'm picking Drew Brees to just pick them apart. What about you?
Man, I love Drew Brees. And, my picks haven't been going too well because I've been going with who I love. But I think I'm just going to stick with you, and I'm going with the Saints in this one. I love Drew Brees in any matchup. He's rolling right now. The Saints have won 2 in a row. They have the worst defense in the league, giving up almost 34 points a game. But, the Chiefs don't really scare anybody. With Alex Smith at quarterback, he's not going to go deep on you. You're not going to have to worry about any 400-point games from him. So, although the Saints don't have the best pass defense, it's not like Alex Smith is going to, burn you all game long. So you're going to have to watch out for Spencer Ware, and you're going to have to see if Jamal Charles is finally ready to go. He lied to me last week and said he was 100%, but obviously he wasn't ready to go 100%. Spencer Ware took the majority of the workload, and he did work. Spencer Ware is, I think he's decent. He's playing for another job next year, I'm sure, a starting job somewhere, probably the Texans, since they seem to just give anybody who has one decent year a starting job. So I think that the Saints will handle this one. Slowly getting back to his primetime self, but I think the Saints are rolling right now. And I think with Sheldon Rankins back, their D tackle first-round pick this year is only going to help their defensive run, and I think that they got this one.
Moving on to Colts at Titans. Titans a 3-point favorite in this one. I don't know if you can really pick a favorite in this one. Titans have looked terrible. They just escaped a win against the Browns, I'm surprised they could play even a close game against anybody. So the Titans escape with a win to the Browns, which they got lucky. And then you have the Colts, who are just chokers pretty much, and they end up playing a close game and then choke right at the end. So this is a matchup. You got Marcus Mariota. You got Murray, who's pretty good, but then you got the Colts on the other side with Andrew Luck with no defense behind them. So for this one, I'm going to go against the Vegas odds for that one. I'm going to pick the Colts. I think this is the week that they can actually come out and win a game against the Titans, who are not very good. And then the Titans, I just can't ever pick the Titans to win a game. Even though the Colts are struggling, I'm going to go with the Colts by, I'll say 3. So even though the Titans are 3-point favorites, I'm going to switch that 3-point favorites over to the Colts. What about you?
Finally, I think we're going to have a disagreement. I think with Dwayne Allen, Philip Dorsett, and Dante Moncrief out, the Colts really are down to T.Y. Hilton, and that's it. And that's all they've been rolling with, really. Frank Gore, I say it week after week, just isn't getting it done. Their running game is non-existent. Their defense is one of the worst defenses in the league, bottom 5 in pretty much every statistical category, every major statistical category anyways. They don't get to the quarterback, only 8 sacks on the season. And when you go against a guy like Mariota that can, he doesn't love to run on the ground, but he can move, he can get away from your pass rush. And they're rolling right now. The Titans, they're not the most high-powered offense in the league. Obviously, they only beat the Browns by 2, which in and of itself is pretty embarrassing at this point in time. But I think they have the ingredients to win this one. They got a solid, sneaky good defense. As long as Mariota stops turning the ball over, the defense can shine and show the world that they aren't somebody they've been pushovers, in recent seasons, and they've definitely stepped up. Arakpo, one of the league leaders in sacks at 7. I think he's 3rd. And DeMarco's doing his thing. DeMarco is, arguably one of the best backs in the league, arguably top 5. He can catch. I think he's leading the team in catches, and obviously leading the team, almost leading the league in rushing yards outside of Ezekiel Elliott. So I think the Titans got this one.
The fact that a running back leads the team in catches shouldn't really be a good sign. So,
well, that's true. But you go back to the Colts. They also haven't won a game on the road this year. So, it's all relative. But I think that Mariota is finally getting it together, and I think that he's going to continue streaking.
It'll definitely be a close one. It'll be a fun one to watch. But then we got the Vikings and the Eagles. Right as everyone jumps on the bandwagon for the Eagles, they go out and lose to the Lions. And, that one, not really a good matchup for the Eagles. And it's one of those things where they lose to the Lions a couple weeks ago, and Ryan Matthews putting the ball on the turf, and they're throwing interceptions. And the Eagles are just part of that division that I just really don't like. So I don't know if everyone's going to jump off that Eagles bandwagon or if they're going to continue on it. And then you have the Vikings, who I don't even know what to say about the Vikings. I don't know how they're undefeated. Sam Bradford is not a good quarterback, so I don't know why he all of a sudden has just rejuvenated his career. I think you can fully credit that to the Vikings defense. And whoever would have thought, Bridgewater's out, Adrian Peterson's likely out for the season, and the Vikings are 5-0. So something's going on. I think something's got to give with the Vikings. And although they're 5-0 and I want to see the Lions beat them for their first loss, I'm going to go ahead and pick the Eagles in this one, just strictly because it is at Philadelphia. And I think it's going to be a test for the Vikings on the road. And I just think this is probably the week that Bradford goes out there and panics and ends up losing the game by, I'll say, a touchdown. So I'm going against the odds in this one, picking the Eagles. I don't know why, because the Vikings are real good. And I'm really not sold on the Eagles, but the Eagles are at home, and I don't like Sam Bradford, so I'm picking the Eagles.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't really like Sam Bradford. I don't know what it is, and it's not like his receivers are really good receivers. They're just playing good football. He's being a perfect game manager right now, not turning the ball over. He usually does. He usually doesn't complete as many passes as he does, and he's going against the team that owned him in the very beginning of the year. You remember back to, heading into the season, Sam Bradford was the Eagles starting quarterback. And, barring a Teddy Bridgewater injury, he's still there. So he was their starter last year. I believe started 14 games for them. And they know his tendencies. This defense is the same, virtually the same defense that practice against him every day. They know his tendencies. They know what he's going to do. Obviously, a different coaching staff, but the coaches aren't on the field. The players are on the field. The players know what he's going to do. The players know what he wants to do. It's rare that you get those type of reps against quarterbacks in the NFL. Every single day, every practice, you're going against this quarterback. So I think Philadelphia has that advantage, and that it's in Philadelphia is also an advantage. And although Philadelphia is only 3-2, all their games have been close. The games that they've lost by a combined total of 8 points, and Carson Wentz, he's figuring it out. He's doing well on the fly, and talking about your, you gave me some flack for saying Jordan Matthews was like Doug Baldwin, but he's averaging almost 3 more yards per catch. Now, I don't think that Jordan Matthews is better than Doug Baldwin. Baldwin is just hasn't really got it going just yet. But as of right now, they virtually are the same player on paper. And I think Doug maybe has a couple more receptions, but yardage-wise, they're within, 15 yards, same amount of touchdowns. And Matthews is 15 yards per catch. So, he's playing very good Doug Baldwin-light football right now. And I think that the Eagles will take this one from the Vikings, who, their defense isn't really that impressive. As a unit, it's very impressive, but they don't have a star. There's a bunch of very solid individuals. There's no weaknesses. And so I think that's been a solid thing for them. But I think that Wentz and Philly is also a good defense that Sam Bradford won't be able to figure out, and that they know his tendencies. So I think that they have the advantage in this one.
And I don't know if we should talk about the next one, Browns and Bengals. Every time we cover the Browns matchup, it's just picking the other team. So Vegas odds, surprisingly, not surprisingly, picking the Bengals, but the point spread, 10 points. And that's a big spread in Vegas if you know anything about how those lines work. And the line is Bengals by 10. I couldn't agree more with that one. I say the Bengals win by more. We were talking about it earlier. Joe Hayden likely out for this game, and it's going to be a real struggle for the Browns to even guard A.J. Green with him in the lineup. And A.J. Green is just going to come out and destroy the Browns' defense. And Andy Dalton, he can go out and have 2-3 picks and still win the game. So Browns, their one highlight of this year, probably Terrell Pryor, but outside of that, good luck. I'm picking the Bengals by, I'll say 17.
Wow, that's pretty bold. If Joe Hayden doesn't play, then it's going to be a blowout, and I think that the Browns will win at least one game this year, but I don't think this is the one. I think that there's way too many question marks. I think when Corey Coleman and some of their skilled star players come back, Joe Hayden and Terrell Pryor, I believe he's dealing with the groin injury right now. And Terrell Pryor is doing everything. He's trying absolutely everything for this team right now. He's throwing passes. He's running the ball. He's catching the ball. It's like Little League. And it's pretty embarrassing watching what he's doing with the Browns. You rarely see something like that. But that just goes to credit Terrell Pryor and how good he is as a player. And, he's really trying every single thing he can do to help this team get at least one win. But, it's going to be tough this week, especially if A.J. Green is uncovered by anybody other than Joe Hayden. It's going to be a long day for the Browns organization, and I think 17 might be even a little understatement if that's the case. So, yeah, I'm rolling with the Bengals. They're at home. I'm going to be really sad if I lose this pick. Bengals playing at home against the Browns, who virtually have nobody. They're on their third, fourth, 15th quarterback or whatever this year, and I got no hope for the Browns just yet.
Yeah, no hope would be definitely the route to go with the Browns if you're going to try to pick a Browns game. Just say no hope every time, and everybody knows what you're talking about. But next matchup, Redskins-Lions. Lions a 1-point pick for this one. It's in Detroit. Home field really hasn't been an issue for Detroit, or a benefit, if you will. And even at home, they just go down to the wire and end up, picking it off at the end or pulling something out, or they just lose the game. So, the fact that it's in Detroit isn't that big of a deal, but they are a 1-point favorite. Stafford, you got Marvin Jones, Golden Tate. Golden Tate played out of his mind last week, finally emerging as one of the stars on the Lions as of last week. I don't know where he was before that. I don't know if he was on vacation like Brady over in Italy when he was suspended, but as far as the Lions go, their offense looking real good. Their defense not looking good at all. And they always rely on that last-second interception. Big play Slay coming up huge. Raphael Bush making a name for himself last week. And I think as long as Big Play Slay shows up in that suit before the game, we have to talk about it every week about that red suit. So if he shows up in that red suit, game over. But then you have the Redskins on the other side. Josh Norman might be able to handle Marvin Jones, but outside of that, I don't think that the Redskins secondary can cover Golden Tate and some of the other receivers for the Lions. And the Redskins, it's going to be kind of a homecoming, if you will, for Kirk Cousins coming back to Detroit. Your favorite, Kirk Cousins. I know he's one of your favorite players in the league right now. And I'm going to say Lions by 3 because they like to keep games close.
Yeah, you're right. I'm not a Kirk Cousins fan at all, and he just keeps winning. He really does. I don't know why. I don't know how. Deshaun potentially may not play this week. I think he'll suit up, but as of right now, it doesn't look promising for Deshaun. He's nursing a shoulder injury right now. But if Deshaun doesn't go, as always, I don't believe in Kirk Cousins. I'm pretty sure I never will. Matt Jones, definitely don't believe in him. Had 135 rushing yards thanks to a long 57-yard run at the very end of the game to put the game out of reach as they were trying to put the game out of reach. And I don't think that he touches the 100-yard mark again this season. He's just not a very impressive back. Nothing against him, I guess. He just doesn't really have what it takes to be, every down guy, a guy to take over a game. He has the speed. He just hasn't shown me anything just yet against a decent team. And I think that the Lions are rolling right now. Stafford's playing great football, 7 touchdowns, no picks. I think he had a fumble within the last 2 games. Quarterback rating above 135, which is absolutely ridiculous. And it's going to be hard to stop this offense when it gets rolling like this. I think that, 3 is a little low, the victory by 3. Unless Kirk Cousins has a great game and can keep pace with this offense, it's promising to see Marvin Jones not having to step up. And Golden Tate really took over the game, and Anquan Bolden wasn't a slouch either. He had 8 grabs, made big plays all game long. And this is a team that doesn't really have a run game right now. Nobody knows who the running back is going to be week after week, and Stafford continues to get it done. It's he's challenging all defenses to come stop him, and the last 2 weeks, nobody's been able to. And I know they weren't the most impressive defenses, but what he's putting up with the stats that he's putting up right now is exactly what you're supposed to do against teams that aren't your level of competition, and he's doing it. So I think the Redskins defense is not a threat, and although the Lions defense isn't really a threat either, the Redskins offense is really going to have to get it rolling to keep up with this Lions team, and I think the Lions at home is going to be able to hang on.
So you think this is the only week so far that the Lions are going to win by more than a touchdown or 1 possession? Every game they played, they either won by 1 possession or lost by 1 possession. It's got to be some kind of record, but is this the week that they win by more than a touchdown or a field goal?
Yeah, I think it took Stafford a little while in the beginning of the season. It's a lot harder. Just because guys are talented, it's hard to get on the same page with guys. It takes time, and that's the thing that fans overlook. It's they start off 1-3 or any team is what I'm talking about, and then automatically hit the panic button. But you got to think about Marvin Jones didn't play on this team last year, and Anquan didn't play on this team last year. It's not like this whole offense isn't brand new, but Stafford is the same quarterback. He had Calvin Johnson last year. It's a totally different offense than what he's used to. So you got to learn your players, and you can't. He doesn't have Calvin as an option to throw to every single time. So he's got to get used to his guys, but he's still a great quarterback. And I think now that he's got it rolling, teams have to keep up with the Lions. This is going to be a high-powered scoring offense, and I think that's why their defense is so bad, because going into the season they knew it was going to be a bad defense, but they figured that they could just outshoot teams, and now they're getting to their midseason form, and teams are going to have to perform. So I think that the Lions are finally going to get it rolling, and they have been rolling the past 2 weeks. So we'll see what they can do.
All right, and then another close one. Jaguars favored by 1 in this one. Raiders at Jags. I'm surprised that the Jaguars get the favorite pick in this one, although they are the home team. Raiders are just looking, I don't want to say it, but they're looking pretty good. And who would have ever thought that the Raiders would have a decent record at this point in the season? You have guys like Bruce Irvin on that defense, Michigan State's finest on the Raiders defense as well. And, it's one of those things where the Raiders you thought they were maybe a couple years away, and now they come out there, and just one of those things where they're actually doing things right now. And I wasn't expecting that at all. Then you got Bortles on the other side, who I know you're not a huge fan of. And the Jaguars defense, I'm not really sold that they're going to do much against the Raiders. Derek Carr potentially set up for a big game in this one, but I just don't know how you could pick the Jaguars by a point in this one. I'm just guessing because it's at home, but I'm going to take the Raiders in this one. I'm
usually wrong, so I'm going to go with the Jags. I I think the Raiders struggled last week. They played in the rain. It was hard to complete passes. Derek Carr tried, but, his guys just weren't really getting open. I know Amari Cooper had a very good game. I think he had 129 yards, but Crabtree was shut down, 2 catches, 10 yards, had very mediocre stats. And outside of him, the running game never really got going, and it was rough. It was a rough outing for the Raiders, and they got clobbered and it was a divisional game. You can't really take divisional games into account with the rest of the league because they're just different type of games. It's the same reason that the Rams always beat the Seahawks. It's you just never know. You play a team twice a year, every single year, and there's just different nuances and different ways you play the game. So I think you just have to put that game as a wash last week, and it's always a new week. So, the Jags coming in, not someone that they see every single year, and, their defense is coming around. The Jags defense is a good defense. You keep Bortles off the field from throwing interceptions or fumbling the ball and putting that defense in good field position, then they're going to get more stops than not. But, they continue to lose because Bortles turns the ball over in bad areas of the field, and their running game is virtually invisible. Nobody knows who the starting running back is going to be or if he's even going to have 20 yards a game. So, to rely on Bortles to put up, Drew Brees, Matt Stafford numbers right now at this point in his career is just not realistic. And it's tough to see. But with the defense emerging as it is, Miles Jack is getting more and more time in there. They implemented him into the offensive or the outside linebacker position and, are trying to get him on the field as much as possible. They got Paul Posluszny there at middle linebacker. So he's filling that gap for, Miles Jack in the future. But right now they're trying to get Miles on the field in any way possible. And I think, having Miles on the field is just going to boost your defense even more. So, once he gets down to NFL speed and gets back healed to 100%, that defense is going to be even better than it is right now. So I'm rolling with the Jags this week. And I think that, Bortles has continued to cut down on the multiple interception, multiple turnover games. And I think that they can win this one against the Raiders, who had the worst defense, by the way, or one of the worst defenses. So I think that Bortles can get it done against this defense.
Interesting pick. I think I'm going to be right on that one, but we'll see. Hopefully I'm right on that one. Got some good games going on, and the next one I don't think will be one of the good games that goes on. Bills favored by 3 at the Dolphins. The Dolphins came up huge against the Steelers. I don't think they can keep it rolling with somebody like Tannehill under center. Dolphins defense, we mention it every week, one of the highest paid defensive lines in the league, and they just haven't really stepped up. They did play a good game against the Steelers, but can they do it against the Bills, who just ripped apart San Francisco? Granted, San Francisco isn't a very good defense. They've got some injuries on their defense, and their team just all around not looking too good. But the Bills put up 45 on them last week, and Dolphins played a good game against the Steelers. Bills ripped apart the 49ers. I'm going to stick with the pick here. I'm going to say Tyrod Taylor can handle business against the Dolphins, and LaShawn McCoy looking like he did 2 years ago, finally. And I think the Bills take this one. I'm going to say they take it by 10.
Yeah, I'm going with you. The Bills are rolling right now. 4 straight wins. Tyrod is being a perfect game manager, playing like Alex Smith, checking down. But he doesn't have Sammy Watkins. It's not like he can just go deep all the time. Just doesn't have that level of talent right now. And Shady McCoy is just doing everything. 3 touchdowns last week, 130 yards. He's unstoppable. He's the reason that they're 3-0, and the defense is playing well. Lorenzo Alexander leading the league in sacks, is leading that defense, and they're playing great football right now. It's going to be tough to stop the Bills. And I know the Dolphins just beat the Steelers, and they're hosting this game, but it was really the perfect recipe last week to beat the Steelers. And Big Ben got hurt. Ajayi had an amazing game, 200 yards. That's never, ever, ever going to happen again. I don't know what happened. This is a guy who's, longest rush of the season was 11 yards, and then all of a sudden he goes for 200 plus. That's ridiculous. Last year, I think his longest run was 24 yards. So 24 yards was his longest run in his career until this last game. And I think that a great game for him, obviously. But, Jarvis Landry also had a decent game. 7 catches, 90 yards, enough to keep the defense honest and get him going. But the running game is just it's never going to look like that the rest of the season, and that's not a knock on Ajayi. 200 yards from anybody is a great game, and I just don't see anybody really touching 200 yards for the rest of this season. Maybe Shady. This looks like a game that Shady could get to 200, but it's few and far between, especially against the Pittsburgh Steelers. 200 yards is a lot of yards. So, hats off to the Dolphins for performing last week, and Cameron Wake got a sack, so hats off to him finally. Getting those numbers up, making that paycheck worthwhile for the Dolphins. But I think the Bills got this one. They're just rolling right now, and I don't see the Dolphins stopping anybody else.
And then we move on to another Browns-like matchup with the Jets and the Ravens. Ravens at Jets. Jets are a 2-point favorite in this one. The Lorax, a.k.a. Fitzpatrick, looks like he's going to be benched for this one, and Geno Smith is likely to start. He probably gives him a better chance to win as long as a teammate doesn't punch him in the face and break his jaw again. But, we'll see how he plays. It's been a while since he's actually been on the field. And if they've been starting Fitzpatrick this whole season, what does that say about Geno Smith's ability if they've been passing on him to start somebody that's going to throw 6 interceptions? Personally, I'm not really sold on that. And then you got Brandon Marshall going up against a terrible Ravens defense, terrible Ravens team in general. You got Flacco on the Ravens and Kanye West bro, Terrence, even though they're not really related. But I know you're not really sold on their running game. Neither am I. I'm not sold on their quarterback. I'm not sold on anything on the Ravens. And I'm not really sold on anything with the Jets either. So that one's a wash if you ask me, but it's at the Jets. So I'm sticking with that pick, Jets by 2. What about you?
I think I'm rolling with the Ravens this week. I know they lost 3 in a row. And, I'm never confident in Flacco, but sometimes he just seems to get it done on weeks that you would never expect. And I think this is one of those weeks. The Jets, they really don't have much to play for. Obviously, quarterback controversy there. They could use a top draft pick, and I know that teams try to act like they don't give up on early in the season. But, really what do they have to play for? They're playing in a division with the Bills and the Patriots, and they're 1-5, So it's like the only thing that winning would accomplish is to get them a worse draft pick than they're already in line to get. So, they really don't have a reason to win. To be honest, that's just the brutal, honest truth of the NFL. At 1-5, they're not going to win, 10, 11 games in a row and finish, a decent wild card game. It's just not going to happen. That doesn't happen in today's NFL, especially with a team like this who doesn't even know who their starting quarterback is. A team that's midway through the season is still trying to find their identity is not a place you want to be. Matt Forte hasn't looked impressive in recent weeks, and there's just not a whole lot going on for this team. Their rush defense isn't looking good. Their pass defense isn't looking good. Revis, there's still questions if he can shut down other receivers. There's just way too many questions to even worry about trying to win some games. It's like, let's just pack it in and hope next year is a better one. Let's get a quarterback and there's just more to gain from losing this game than to win and to try to fight back up with the Patriots and the Bills, who are both absolutely rolling right now. So, a win for them wouldn't mean anything. And I just think that it's just not their week to win. Hopefully they don't. And the Ravens need to take this advantage of Big Ben being injured. They're, one game out of first place, and the Steelers are reeling right now, trying to figure everything out while, the season hasn't gone their way just yet. Missed 3 games with Le'Veon Bell, and now their star quarterback is out with a torn meniscus. So this is the perfect chance for the Ravens to pick up a victory. They need it more than the Jets do, and the Jets could actually use a loss. So I think I'm going with the Ravens.
Moving on to teams that don't need wins because it might screw up their draft pick. 49ers going up against the Bucs. Bucs are a 1-point favorite, even though it's at San Francisco. You got Jameis Winston on one side. You have Colin Kaepernick on the other. 2 terrible defenses, if you ask me, and it's been absolutely horrible to watch both of them. And the Niners hung in there against Buffalo, and you look at the scoreboard, and they're down by a touchdown, and then you look back at the scoreboard, and they're down by 30. So Niners defense is probably just going to collapse against the Bucs eventually. I expect the Bucs to put up maybe 28 points or so, and Kaepernick just to be Kaepernick again. You mentioned before, Kaepernick just didn't have that pinpoint passing, and I know we talked about it last week. His passing is, I think, the reason why he got benched. He obviously has the mobility. He can escape the pocket. You can run the read option pretty efficiently with Kaepernick. But then his passes just at one point, I don't know what happened, but he just kind of missed out and he lost the touch on his passes. And I think that's what the problem is. And I say the Bucs defense gets a couple turnovers and ends up winning by 3. What about you?
I know I went with the 49ers last week, but I'm going to go with them again this week. Kaepernick, he just has something to prove, something to play for. He's playing for, civil rights pretty much, and he needs to win. I think that he needs to win. The 49ers fan base needs to win. And the Buccaneers, while they're good, I like Jameis Winston. I like Mike Evans. Mike Evans isn't going to have an easy time against this secondary. I know there's the team as a whole, the whole 49ers team needs something. They need a good draft pick. But I think that they're playing for pride right now. Chip Kelly is coaching for his job right now. So I think they have a lot more to gain from winning this game. The Buccaneers, Jameis Winston, he turns the ball over a lot. Hasn't turned it over as much in recent weeks. But, I think that it's time that the 49ers finally get one. And I think holding down home field is something that they can do. Kaepernick looked promising last week. He did airmail some passes and it looked like he's been out of football for a year. But, he connected on a nice 56-yard touchdown to Torrey Smith. And I think, with another week of reps with the starters and to get that continuity down with those guys, I think he's going to do wonders for him. Although Carlos Hyde may not be able to go for the 49ers, another big blow to them. I think Kaepernick is going to be able to get it done. I don't know why I'm saying this. It's probably going to end up a loss in my column, but I'm a Kaepernick believer this year, and I think he can do it. If he's going to do it anyways, it's going to be against a team like the Buccaneers who aren't very impressive on the defensive end. And so this is one of the weeks I think that the 49ers will get a W.
All right, and then we got the Chargers at the Falcons. Chargers notorious for blowing the lead at the end of the game. They almost did it at Denver last Thursday. Did everything they could to lose that game, but unfortunately Denver doesn't have a quarterback that can throw it 40 yards into the end zone. So they ended up escaping, even though they gave Denver back the ball with 27 seconds left on a horrible onside kick that just, I don't know how it got through there. It had some weird spin on it and just kind of took a weird turn and went right into the guy's arms on the ground. And Chargers got lucky against the Broncos, and they're not going to get lucky against the Falcons. The Falcons, as I said against the Seahawks, they locked down Julio Jones for the entire first half. And I was like, okay, the Seahawks have got this. Falcons switch up their game plan, come from behind, and nearly win the game after Julio Jones started torching the Hawks in the second half after they did a phenomenal job on him in the first half. So I think if the Chargers had the tendency to lose games in the second half, Falcons have the tendency to make halftime adjustments, come out, get the job done. Matt Ryan to Julio Jones, Mohamed Sanu. I think the Falcons got this one in the bag. I'm going to take the Falcons by 17.
I think I'm going to agree with you, although there's always a week where you just don't come out and perform. You're better than the other team, where I believe the Falcons, like you said, they could be 5-1 if they would have beat the Seahawks. And their offense is the number one offense in the league right now. But there's just something about the Chargers that they kept games close week in and week out, and they found a way to lose it themselves. But this is one of the weeks that I think that the Falcons will roll. I don't think that it'll even be close in the second half. I think that they'll pull out to an early lead and just pace themselves out to finish the game. I don't think that the Chargers have a high enough powered offense to hang with the Falcons. And their defense, obviously, I don't think can roll with them either. Tevin Coleman and Devontae Freeman will have much better weeks this week against a much less talented defense than what the Seahawks gave them last week. So I think that it'll be a nice return for the Falcons team as a whole with that bitter taste of a loss in their mouth. Although I won't be surprised if they come out flat and the Chargers take this one. Although, my official pick is the Falcons. I'm not going to be surprised if the Chargers come out strong.
And then we have the Patriots versus the Roethlisberger-less Steelers. Brady's back. Patriots looking good. And I know there were some questions when Brady wasn't there. He was in Italy hanging out with his wife. I don't know why the Patriots let him go to Italy when he was suspended, but comes back and everything looks all good again with the Patriots. And they're at the Steelers, and without Ben Roethlisberger, I don't think there's as much of a threat. Sure, you have Antonio Brown and you have Le'Veon Bell, two of the biggest playmakers in the game right now. And you have guys like Marcus Wheaton who can kind of fill in the gaps. And I just don't think they're going to have a quarterback that can throw them the ball, though. With Antonio Brown, you can send him deep. Roethlisberger's got a gun that he can just send him deep and gun it down the field 60 yards and have Antonio Brown have a day. Without Ben Roethlisberger, I'm not real convinced that the Steelers are going to beat the Patriots. And I say Brady comes out. If the Steelers can get whooped on by the Dolphins and Tannehill, I say the Patriots are going to come out and get them by 10.
Well, as always, I like to lose these picks, so I think I'm going to go with the Steelers. It's one of those games again that all the signs, just like I felt about the Broncos the other week, all the signs point to the Patriots should be able to dominate this team from start to finish. But the talent in the passing game and now the run game from Le'Veon Bell and Antonio Brown is just too hard to overlook for me. And they're playing at Heinz Field. I just have a feeling that Pittsburgh's going to come to play, and the Pats maybe will come out flat. I think that it's bound to be one of these weeks that they don't come out and play as strong as they always do. And so I'm just going with my intuition. I think that the Steelers, although less talented than this Patriots offense right now, they'll get it going and hold down the home field advantage.
And then finishing out the Sunday games with the Seahawks at the Cardinals. Cardinals are a 2-point favorite. I honestly don't think at Cardinals is really a home field advantage for the Cardinals. I just don't see a huge home field advantage with that stadium. We've seen the Cardinals come up here and beat the Seahawks, and the Seahawks just go right back down there and blow out the Cardinals. And got David Johnson, who's looking almost unhuman-like out there, and he's putting up major stats. And got Larry Fitzgerald, who, when you actually have a good quarterback throwing to him, he's one of the best receivers in the league. John Brown, we talked about him, the invisible man. I think he's still going to be the invisible man, especially with the LOB on him. So I say Larry can get close to 100 yards, and I expect a big game from Larry Fitzgerald, but I think David Johnson's going to get stuffed, and I think he's probably going to run for close to 100 as well, but I don't see the Seahawks defense, especially after how upset Sherman was with giving up the yards to Julio Jones and the defensive adjustments that have to be happening at the Seahawks practice. I just don't see the Seahawks losing this game, even though it is at the Cardinals, and the Seahawks always seem to show up on these big primetime Sunday, Monday night games. And I don't think the Cardinals by 2 pick is really going to hold up for this one. I'm saying Seahawks by 7.
Yeah, I'm with you. The Seahawks are just playing real well right now. Cardinals are getting their stride, but not very impressive wins if you ask me. Wins nonetheless. At the end of the day, that's really what's important. Doesn't matter who you beat as long as you win. But, the Seahawks only have one loss, and it was a weird game that they lost, but that's neither here nor there. What I was really worried about, and I don't even want to say worried, but something that was a glaring weakness, I guess, was Deshaun Shedd late in that game last week against the Falcons. It was usually to Shedd. I mean, I know Sherman didn't, miss a couple very big touchdowns, but the nickel and diamond in between, it was usually to Shedd's guy that was, 5 yards here, 10 yards here, 15 yards there. You know what I mean? So that was interesting to see, but I just don't see. I mean, that was the number one offense in the entire league, and I know it was a home game, but it was still, the number one offense in the league, held to 24 points, and Seahawks are rolling right now. Russ is just getting healthier and healthier. They're keeping him off the turf as much as possible. The run game is non-existent, really. Christine Michael, he did like a shush the crowd. I don't know what he was doing. It's not like he was having a great game. I think it was only on like a first down too. Maybe it was on the touchdown. I can't really remember, but it was like, what are you doing? You're at home trying to shush the crowd? It doesn't make any sense. But, I don't really get what Christine Michael does anyways. Hopefully he can figure some things out and hang on to the rock. That's really been his big problem. Spiller, he's been getting a few more touches. I'd like to see him get in some action more. But, I think the Seahawks are rolling right now, and I don't see the Cardinals' defense has been struggling all year stopping them.
And then finishing out all the picks, probably the worst game on TV besides the Browns at Bengals or the Bucks at Niners, Texans at Broncos. And I'm not really a fan of this matchup at all. Broncos, they are at home. They're an 8-point favorite. They're just both teams that I'm not real excited about watching, especially on a Monday night game. And the Texans, J.J. Wattless Texans, they're going to go out there and they're going to try their best to beat these Broncos that, no real quarterback for the Broncos. You saw Paxton Lynch go out there, and it's just, I feel like ever since he's started and they've been trying to figure things out, it's just not one of those things that you can say it's the same Broncos when they had Peyton Manning or anything like that. It's not really a team that you can compare to the current Broncos, and I just am not sold on their quarterbacks, either Simeon or Lynch. I'm not real sold on C.J. Anderson either, and I know he had a good first week, and everybody was back on C.J. Anderson's bandwagon, and then all of a sudden he just comes back to earth and trying out new running backs. And for this one, I'm not real excited about picking a winner in this one, but since it is at the Broncos, I'm not real sold on the Texans overall, and they're kind of hot and cold. We had talked about hot and cold teams, and the Texans are another one. And without J.J. Watt putting the fear into opposing offenses, I say the Broncos end up getting lucky and winning this one by 2 or 3 at the end. But I just think it's going to be a terrible game, personally. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a terrible game, too. It'll be nice to see Paxton Lynch on Monday Night Football. I always like seeing the young guys come out there and, the futures of the organization. Similar to Jared Goff, I hope he shows up in London. But, in this game, I think that the Broncos defense is just a lot better. Texans, I'm not a fan, as much of a fan I'm not of as Kirk Cousins. I'm the exact same with Brock Osweiler. And Osweiler's coming back to Denver where they know everything about him. He's the guy that's been there for a while. There in Denver, was supposed to be the guy that took over for Peyton Manning, but the Texans decided to pay him a bunch of money, and the Broncos laughed at it. So it just leads me to believe that they know everything about this guy. While the Texans are still learning about him, and DeAndre Hopkins is a great receiver, top 5, but he's just not producing with Osweiler at the helm. So. Will Fuller has gone invisible in recent weeks. He's potentially injured. I'm not too sure just yet. But, Lamar Miller, very ineffective with Osweiler at the helm. And so I just think that with the defense that the Broncos have, it's going to be nearly impossible for the Texans to move the ball. And, while the Texans defense is decent, even without Watt, I just think that the Broncos have too much, especially playing at home, for the Texans to win this one.
And that wraps up our Week 7 picks. Be sure to watch NFL Red Zone, watch them roll through all the games there, and you can see which one of us is right. I have the better record right now, but we know that that's not safe because, man, some of these picks are just up in the air picks. Corey might be a better choice this week, but we're going to see who comes out on top and who has the better record. Revolutionary Sports Show. I'm Brian Duchaine.
And I'm Corey Sullivan.
And we'll see you next week.